Welcome to Ore-atory. Today, my guest is Tyler Hall. Tyler has been involved in the mining industry since 2012. He's co-founder of ExploreTech, and he has roles spanning exploration, production geology, resource estimation, and business development with companies like Freeport McMoRan, Glencore, and also at Stanford University. I am very, very excited to have him here with us today, and I am pleased to have all of you joining us. Thank you for being here. Let's launch in. To kick things off, Tyler, the first thing I like to ask is what's getting you excited about your work these days?
Well, thanks for having me, Lindsey. This is great. This is the second podcast that I'm doing. I did GeoHug over the summer with Alex, and so it's good to join you here and talk things through. What's getting me excited? Probably about 2 years ago, when I was wrapping up my PhD at Stanford, there seemed to be this increase in energy on campus around mining. And it's interesting to say that because in 2017, it wasn't like that at all. And so when I had started there, and we're seeing that energy not only at campuses that you wouldn't expect, but in places broadly in the community interested in mining. And it's, to me, that's energizing because having been in mining since 2012, it was never really like a popular, interesting thing to be in. People have misconceptions about it, but ultimately there's a ton of people interested in getting involved. And just being able to talk to people about the industry, engage with them, see what the new ideas are, the quality of ideas coming out and like innovations around not only technology, which we can talk about, but also business model, politics. Like we're living in like some of the most interesting times in my short career, just in 10 years in mining. But from how I talk to other people as well, they're like, man, this is great. And so there's positivity, there's energy. Like it's a really fun place to be right now, just from like an intellectual and like a social perspective.
I'm absolutely in concert with everything you just said. And it's something that I have picked up on as well. And I actually, just in advance of this, did like a SME midweek mixer call, and I got to present for 7 quick minutes about the trends that I'm seeing in the mining industry and what I think we might be seeing in 2025. And I was really sad that we hadn't had this conversation in advance of that. But, it's interesting to me that you and I are sort of very aligned in terms of entrepreneurship, the mining industry, things being really exciting, and having an optimism going into it, because I think that I see two ends of the spectrum. I see a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. And like, there aren't enough people, there's not enough money, that all of these problems, right? And then I see the opposite side of it routinely, where it's like, yes, there's all of this stuff. There's this undercurrent of uncertainty, of global risk, of economics, of politics, of all of the things. There's not enough money, but that makes opportunity for all of us to come in with some really interesting thoughts, solutions, opportunity to collaborate, God forbid, in the mining industry and things like that. And so I'm excited about some of probably the same things that you're excited about. But this makes me want to ask, and I was actually thinking about it in advance of our call today, what made you want to start your business?
The reason that we started Explore Tech is because we saw these really great technologies being used in upcoming and new projects. And what we wanted to do was make those technologies accessible to many people throughout the industry. And so what we're trying to do at ExploreTech is make sure even the smallest companies have access to the best tools and can use the best tools themselves. I think like with technology and mining, and it's sort of a tricky term because technology can mean so many different things, but ultimately like people can be skeptical of it because they don't know how it works. And we'll get into it a little bit later, but these new tools that are coming out are way more easy to understand than the ones that have been around in the past.
Sure.
And that's for a number of reasons. But what we're finding is people like they finally understand what's going on in some of these new things that are happening. And as a result, the buy-in is a lot stronger because people get it. And it's a lot more simple. It's very clear. It adds like a clarity and speed of thought and decision making that, for the reasons we were talking about before, people need because there can be so much work. I mean, there's so many fast decisions to make. Like, how do you do that? What are the best tools to use? And so at ExploreTech, that's what we're focused on.
Yeah.
is trying to give people those great tools and then helping them, number one, use them, but also apply them at their projects in a service-based fashion as well.
Yeah. Well, and I absolutely appreciate that because I think that there's, as we've both said, so much work to do, and the accessibility of technology broadly has been one that's been such a serious investment in terms of time and cost and its ability to influence decision makers that it was prohibitive, right? And so I really love that there's so much being done in this area that smaller organizations can leverage it so that they can do their work better and really grow without getting perhaps gobbled up by the next big guy or big company that's out there if they don't want to yet, right? And be autonomous for a little longer if that's what they choose to do. So, sort of leaning into this excitement of technology and innovation in mining, I feel like you guys ExploreTech are really sort of at this cutting edge in the exploration space. So, what kinds of innovations and other things are you seeing and helping develop in your organization?
So it's an interesting question because what we are doing at ExploreTech is to essentially make traditional geology and geophysics and geochemistry a lot faster. It used to take a lot of time to generate geological models. And over the past 20 years, that time has gotten faster and faster and faster. And some people say, okay, there's a trade-off between speed and quality. And I don't necessarily agree with that view because geology and exploration and mining is so uncertain. These models that you have, geologists know that they're just best guesses, right? Well, what we're able to do is come up with hundreds or thousands of these guesses and then propose those to decision makers and geologists and say, which of these makes sense? No longer are you anchored to one best model that you have. You can consider so many different possibilities and therefore opportunities. And so we can present all sorts of different drilling plans based on all sorts of different models and hypotheses. And people who might not have had a say in the decision-making process because they had some idea that wasn't popular or something got lost in the mix, we can test all that out. And we can see which ones make sense, which ones don't. Sometimes, drilling in one location is cheaper than another for reasons that you wouldn't expect. And so it's actually kind of cool what we're seeing just by being able to do traditional geology and geophysics in a much more rapid manner. And the way that we do that is by using computing. So when people are talking about AI, a lot of times you think about ChatGPT, right? Help me write a proposal, help me write an email, stuff like that. And that's true. I mean, I use it every day. And I know a lot of people who use it every day. And if you aren't, I recommend it. People in the audience, I recommend trying out ChatGPT. Claude by Anthropic is another one. Perplexity is another one. Just try these out. But there's a fundamental innovation that's going on there it's using a lot of computational power. That's why the stock of NVIDIA is going crazy, because these sorts of insights are unlocked by a completely new style of computing, which is speeding up things that were really slow before. And in that increase in speed, you get a lot more accuracy.
Right. Also use AI as a companion, as a thought process, as something that helps write emails and draft things at a preliminary stage. And it's gotten really, really interesting because it did start out pretty basic, and that sort of, for lack of a better term, because I'm not a tech person, database of knowledge that it is amassed so that it can do things. And what I can feed it and create from it has just gotten so robust. And so I can imagine that how you're leveraging that at ExploreTech for what you're doing in the exploration space is also something where you're growing this knowledge base and capable of perhaps increasing its effectiveness as you move forward. Is that true? Or am I sort of grasping here?
Yeah, to some respect, it is true. We take a sort of different approach where we don't necessarily rely on big globally trained data sets to test in smaller areas, because mineral deposits are really unique one to the other. And so if you train something on a really large data set of all different kinds of mineral deposits, it can actually lead you down the wrong path. And so that's why we focus on drawing out the knowledge from the geophysicists, the geologists working on the project, and what are their ideas and how can we test their ideas as rapidly as possible. There's like validations that we can do by comparing to other data sets, but it's important to like be cautious when mixing data sets together because you introduce complexity, and in complexity there can just be a lot of errors. And so we just like to do simple things very, very quickly. And we found that clarity and that speed, and ultimately it helps people communicate their ideas and what they're thinking about their projects. And again, we're working in outliers. I mean, the mineral deposits that we're working on, you can have grade in places that you didn't expect because maybe there's something new about the geology that you're learning.
Yeah.
And so being able to test all of those outliers and all of those wacky ideas or something like that, it's pretty fun. You know, talking with people and walking through their ideas and saying, yes, it is possible to do that. And it's actually going to take a shorter amount of time than anybody thinks. Like, that's really great.
Well, it is really great. And I'm sure that you probably have some different statistics than I do, but I think I find geologists to be some of the most optimistic people that I get to work with in the mining industry. And I really love that. It's much, much different than sometimes, you know, a mining engineer who's trained to find the faults and the reasons why not, or an attorney that's trained to do the same thing from a corporate basis. But I think, you know, seeing that moment where your technology and your work with these teams, you get that like aha or like that breakthrough moment where something changes. Can you talk about an experience like that where perhaps with a client, all of a sudden what you brought to the table is an absolute game changer? Like they were thinking, let's go down this path, but now they're going down another.
Yeah, so we had a pretty great engagement with Prismo Metals. And so they're exploring for a copper porphyry deposit similar to Resolution at their Hot Breccia project.
Okay.
And what we helped them do was design their drilling campaign. And so we were able to present to them hundreds of different drilling campaigns ranked based on the probability that they would intersect something, the depth of those drilling campaigns, all sorts of things. So we could rank those campaigns based on some person has an idea of where would we drill to intersect something at the shallowest level? Where are the largest possible deposits located? What we end up doing is simulating thousands of those possibilities and then saying, okay, if you have 10,000 meters of drilling, here's where you would drill. If you have 5,000, if you have 3,000, if you have one best drill hole to do first, where would you go, right? And even if somebody isn't interested at all in generating a 10,000 meter drilling campaign, it's helpful to know whether or not you're drilling 10,000, 5,000, 1,000, what's my first drill hole, right?
Yep.
What's the best one to go to? And if it doesn't change for any of those scenarios, then you're pretty confident about like, hey, this is a good idea. And like the whole organization benefits from that confidence and ultimately leads to like this sort of positivity and energy about the project and campaign that people are going to go ahead and do. Because a lot of times these campaigns and exploration is like a years long process of like, finally, we have everything permitted. We've fundraised, we've got everything together. Let's go ahead and drill. And like that uncertainty of like, are we actually like drilling the best hole here first? What's actually going on? Being able to talk through with the team and be part of that decision-making process and offer a really strong recommendation is really great. And so that was one of the first projects that we did as ExploreTech. Prismo was one of the customers that believed in us from the start. And these are technologies that Alex and I had been developing since 2017 and inspired by some of our industry experience before graduate school as well. And being able to work with someone who believes in the technology, knows what you're talking about, knows the benefit that it'll have, and then seeing that through all the way to the end, they'll be drilling on Hot Breccia in the next few months. And so it's great to be a part of that process. And there was one thing you had mentioned before about geologists and geophysicists, geoscientists in general, compared to like engineers and lawyers and people on the finance side as well, right? What we're finding is that these tools give those people confidence in the decisions that are made by geologists and decision makers in junior companies. Because again, what we allow is for this black box, right? where people don't necessarily trust what's going on because there's only one output. How did you get to that? What are the assumptions? If you can generate a lot more content around the decisions that you're making, the whole team feels a lot more confident about it. And I wish these tools had existed when I was working with Glencore. I worked with them for a period of about 7 months in 2019. And we're evaluating projects. And so if I had tools like this when I was evaluating projects with them, we could have evaluated way more impactfully. And I'm sure it's going on in companies like that based on the conversations that I'm having with my friends throughout the industry. It's just been a lot of fun. And the thing is like the people who use these tools earlier are going to see the benefits earlier. And they'll likely be able to either outcompete or at least increase their familiarity with these tools to be able to make better decisions in their own operations.
Well, I really appreciate that you said having options allows for conversations and clarity and certainty and buy-in from additional sources within the organization and perhaps from external resources, right? Because I think that, as you said, the exploration arm of our industry, it's costly, it's risky. There's so many things that happen that make it not possible in some circumstances, right? So it's like, all right, I think this is the drill hole to go with, right? And so by utilizing these tools and gaining some clarity and consensus and buy-in from these other groups, it's much easier, I presume, to get the finance arm to say, yes, let's go ahead. We feel really good about it. We're all enthusiastic and excited about it, and we've seen some demonstrable results, so to speak. So the confidence level rises, which allows everybody to say, let's move this forward, rather than decision by indecision and not doing something or waiting too long and having the market kind of go flat. And we see so many of these circumstances happen. And so, like you said, I just think that there's huge power in how the organization can function with some of these tools, but not just that, about how they can talk about what they're doing. And I had a quick conversation the other day, and I keep hearing from the exploration arm of our industry that regardless of the drill results, regardless of the press releases that they're putting out, that it's just not moving the needle on their stock price. It's not doing all of these things. And I wonder if by leveraging some of this information, by using your technology, if these companies could put out perhaps more results or say, hey, we're all excited about this and we're leveraging this new technology and getting that enthusiasm from external investors and stakeholders so that they can also say like, hey, like maybe the stock price moves, maybe there's different kinds of correspondence from investors. I don't know, but maybe this is something we should be doing to even leverage that.
I think what we'll end up seeing is field seasons will be a lot more productive because you'll just be able to get a lot more done.
Sure.
And the amount of news flow that you're able to communicate is going to be really strong. Right now, AI is sort of in this software desktop evaluation. But what we're going to end up seeing is geochemical surveys performed in real time, geophysical surveys performed in real time, adjusting in real time. And you'll probably be able to get done in one field season what you might have been able to get done in 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Yeah.
And so I think the timelines on these discoveries are going to get a lot faster. It also helps you tell a lot clearer of a message because, say, for example, you have a really technical document from a NI 43 101, which is like already just the worst word for it, right? Like, what does that even like mean, right?
Yeah.
But with these tools like ChatGPT, for example, somebody in the community can say, hey, there is this press release. What does this actually mean?
Right.
And I'm not saying that ChatGPT is going to really get everything right from that news release, but I've been surprised at how it can summarize some of this content and be able to explain this mineral deposit in a location, at least the type of it. If you go to Perplexity, it'll point you to academic resources about where to learn more about a particular deposit type. What is mineral exploration? And so if somebody's part of the community where exploration and mining is taking place, they can skill up a lot faster in, hey, what is going on in my community? And like, what are people actually like telling us? What are these files? What does it mean? And you'd no longer really have to get like an advanced degree, a master's or a PhD, to really at least get a high level appreciation of what is exploration and mining, and how is it affecting my community.
So this takes me in like, oh my gosh, so many directions, Tyler.
Yeah.
But let's start from community. So from a community engagement standpoint, I have always argued that the more, the earlier, the better, right? From an engagement, from an education standpoint, so that these projects have support to move forward. And we have seen so many cases where this has not been done or has not been done well, but to utilize a technology like yours, ChatGPT, somebody that is skilled at community relations, and really pair all of those things together and go out and say, hey, let's have a conversation, meet them where they're at, provide them some new details, some new insights, and perhaps be met with less resistance, even give them the tools to do it themselves, which I think would be even more powerful if they chose to explore that, because it's so critical to sort of start there, right? So it's one thing to be excited about drilling a project. It's another to tell the community around you that you're doing it and to get them excited about it. And so what I'm hearing from you is that like perhaps all of this is the perfect storm to help make that happen.
It helps you make clearer decisions and clearer communications. And to the extent that, like, a member of the community might be using like an advanced technology or something, likely, that's not like the way it's going to occur. But like what they might end up seeing is just a lot clearer communication from the company, and something that makes sense, and a through line being drawn from one news release to another document to another community meeting that was had, that just makes a lot more sense
Yeah.
to everybody involved in the process. And the challenge is like, how do you balance that, right? Because like people use this word for some of these AI tools, hallucination, which is also like a pretty scary word. But like ultimately what that means is ChatGPT is just making mistakes, but it's really confident about the mistakes that it's telling you, right? And so like it can be challenging, because like what if something is completely wrong coming out of this, right? But again, what I get back to before is being able to iterate, come up with many possibilities, being able to see, okay, is that actually wrong? That accuracy is going to improve over time. And like even with how small our industry is, I mean, mineral exploration in the United States is not the biggest industry in the world. Not many people know about it, right?
Right.
But it affects everybody. The quality of information that you can get from some of these tools is really, really powerful. I should say that like the large language models, which is what ChatGPT is, it's essentially speaking to you back and forth. We don't necessarily use much of that in our business today to actually generate these drill holes. What Again, before, when I was talking about using traditional geological and geophysical and geochemical methods, but just doing them a lot faster. Large language models and the techniques we apply at ExploreTech, all of them benefit from just this explosion in computing and the access to really strong computers. That's what's really changing a lot in the world right now, is that this compute and the way people solve problems is becoming a lot more efficient. And yeah, it's an interesting place. There's going to be a lot of growing that people do into it. And certainly there are going to be, people who are just not interested. Maybe they've used the tool in the past and it just has made, no sense, and they want to stick to what they know. I would say that, there is something out there for everybody. And I would recommend trying something out. I mean, there was recently a release out of ChatGPT where you can speak to it through your phone. You can just speak to your phone, and then ChatGPT will talk back at you. And that's fantastic. I can sit at the table and then practice Spanish. My fiance is Dominican, and I want to learn Spanish. And so it's in the ways that people access this kind of technology and the way that they use it in their jobs. It'll make for an interesting few years as people sort of change the way that they do things. And as the younger people grow up and become more prominent in the industry as well. I'm in my early 30s, right? I just started mining in 2012. And so it's not like I've been in the industry for long, but I'm already seeing like the amount of energy that people in their early 20s or even high school are getting around the mining industry. I mean, I've never seen more younger people interested in mining before ever. And at the beginning, I was talking about that, where at Stanford, it was not popular in 2017. It was a couple of us, myself and Alex included, and a couple. Now people are like, all right, hey, mining metals, like how can we get involved? And so it's been great. And this technology side of it is one of the reasons why.
I absolutely agree. And I actually spoke about this morning in my presentation. I said, the next generation of those that decide to join mining will be doing it because they are a very values based entity, group of individuals who want to influence, who have a passion to perhaps do something good and change the world. And mining has the capacity to do that in so many ways at this point, in much more responsible ways than we have looked at it in the past, right? And I also think that the technology side of it sexies it up enough to get them saying, wow, like I can lean on some of these LLMs. I can look at this from a very different perspective. I perhaps don't have to be in the field or in a remote location or whatever, like they have been in the past, while also being able to contribute, make decisions quickly, influence, impact, et cetera. And so I think that this is a really interesting perfect storm of one, not having enough people in our industry, that we're going to have to leverage technology, not all by itself to help make up for that, but I think that we're going to have to leverage technology in order to get over the gap of people that we don't have, but also to kind of like get the next ones in, because just as you noted earlier, maybe we don't need a PhD all of a sudden to understand all of this, right? So maybe we're using some of this information and saying, okay, interpret this for me so that I can understand it. How do I then make decisions with the rest of my team so that we can carry this forward? And that alone, I think, will change how we're doing it, the individuals that are interested in it. And I had a friend, and she said she was at a book club meeting and they were talking about what they were doing. And she said, I said I was in mining. And she said, oh, one of my daughter's friends says she wants to go into that. And like, Lord, Kelly, who was in the meeting, and she shared it on LinkedIn, and we've talked about it since. But I thought, oh my gosh, the fact that they even know about it is remarkable, because I'm still educating friends of mine who have sort of known what I've done for 20 years and are like, what is mining? And do the dwarves do it? And like, are there
Yeah.
pickaxes involved? And so I think we're at a precipice of a lot of change in so many ways, but I find it really exhilarating to think about all of the ways that we can leverage it to do good, to change the way that we're doing it. And I often talk about how do we attract the next generation of talent. And I think that we're here, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and you said something really, really great there, is that technology is making mining more accessible.
Yep.
And that accessibility is really what the industry needs in the moment right now.
Yep.
And so it's been great to be able to see that evolve over time and the increase in prominence. And people who otherwise would never have gotten involved, it's like, wow, I'm interested in this. How do I get started? It lowers the bar for at least getting your start, right? And there's going to be times where a PhD is required, signing off on resources, all those sorts of things.
Yep.
But it's going to help people understand what are the fundamentals that I need to know, and then get people up to speed on those fundamentals.
Yep.
And so you end up having just a lot more qualified of a workforce a lot faster. And we were talking about before how it's hard to hire people. There's too much going on there. Like it can almost feel like overwhelming in some respects. But honestly, like the fact that this sort of stuff is coming out now is going to make, business owners, like, their lives kind of easier when it comes to a hiring perspective. One note that I wanted to at least communicate was like, and what I've seen on campuses as well, is that people are motivated by the impact that they can make, but they're also motivated by the lifestyle that mining can afford them. And so, like, it's undeniable that the salaries are great in mining. And that's like one note that I feel like can get lost in the mix sometimes and is really relevant for people my age and younger, is like, hey, this is a great lifestyle and you can build a great family with an income in the mining industry.
Yeah.
And more people learning that and seeing that, and especially in today's, environment is, I think that's great. And the stronger that mining can communicate that, the better.
We keep tossing the word communication around, and I think it makes me want to talk about that more specifically. And I think part of what we've not done well as an industry is talk about ourselves. We've talked about the mistakes we've made. We've talked about, what's gone wrong. We've done damage control, but we've not done a great job of saying these are some of the opportunities and then the ways that we can lean into a values-based organization and say, copper does all of these amazing things. You're not just going to drive a haul truck. You're not just going to be a geologist that makes a discovery. You're not just going to be somebody that creates a short or long-term model for the mine. You're helping extract copper, which does X, Y, and Z. And these are all of the reasons that we need it. And talking about that while also valuing the community, while also valuing your individual contributors, while also communicating to the market, this is why we need it, this is what we're doing, this is how long it's going to take, with an air of transparency, responsibility, et cetera, I think will also give us a platform to increase investment, increase interest, and get the attention that we've desperately needed for so long. And so I'm really glad that you're saying that you think that there's more enthusiasm around it, but I still think that we need to leverage our ability to communicate, not with drill results, not with financial press releases, but in a way that impacts our world in a positive way. And then say, we need all kinds of people, not just STEM professionals, but all kinds of individuals to contribute to this to make it work. Because I can't really think of a job that mining doesn't also incorporate. We need nurses. We need healthcare practitioners in the middle of nowhere. We need lawyers. We need finance professionals. We need, investor relations. We need engineers of all kinds. And so it's sort of like, if you want to do this and tie your name onto something, companies need to make a compelling reason to do so, not just make money, drill holes, et cetera. We need a big vision.
It's interesting because like what I'm thinking about, and I think about this a lot, is how do we make mining personal? And AEMA has like a recent thing that they're working on, called I Am Mining, and they're telling the personal stories of the people that like actually do these jobs that others don't really understand or know or even exist, or how do you even. And so like that initiative has been really great.
Yeah.
And like there's been content creators like, for example, Jeff Scanlon, who have done a great job telling those stories. And you can follow along on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on X, right? And I think like the kind of content that people are producing and the way that people are like engaging with that content is really great. It's just increasing that technology. It's not necessarily AI or anything like that, but like being able to access that kind of media and hear those stories and see people making a difference in their communities, and hear the different ways you can get involved. It's pretty great. It's nice. It takes a little bit of work to like get involved in the mining industry if you're from a place that isn't nearby, right?
That's exactly right.
Julie was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she had a comment of like, "Look, I'm driving by these stockpiles every day. I can't like I'm seeing it every single day."
Yep.
But there are people who don't see it every single day. If they can be scrolling on TikTok and then bump into some of Jessica Scanlon's like content, that's great. It's engaging, it's nice, it can be funny, and it's a different perspective. And it's like a very like American perspective as well. I mean, if you think about like California is the golden state, Arizona is the copper state, Nevada is the silver state. Like, why did people come out to the West Coast, right?
Yep.
It's interesting. And thinking about like what mining could look like in the next 5 or 10 years, I think what we'll end up seeing is that the dollar cost per ton of extracting some metal in the United States is going to go down. And as a result, it's going to be a lot more profitable to mine in the United States. Of course, you have to solve the permitting issues and everything like that. And I think those will be resolved over time. We're seeing great movements even within the current administration and, of course, the future administration. And I think moving on, people are just going to be a lot more comfortable with where these metals are coming from. And it'll make a lot more sense from a business perspective as well. And so, I don't know, getting involved in the community, and especially at AEMA, which is one of my favorite organizations, like the annual meeting, not to plug it too much, but like that meeting is awesome. Like it's
I
fantastic.
mean, that's where you and I met. And
Yeah.
and so for so many reasons, it's one of my favorites as well. And I'm obviously very partial, but I agree with you. I think they've done extraordinary work from policy, from lobbying, from supporting the mining industry to really influence change in a positive way. That it's hugely impactful to be there and around the individuals that choose to go. And so I've picked up some of my favorites, including you, from that very conference. But I agree with you. I think that we've got to solve the permitting issue. And you've mentioned several times that like your technology, AI, that some of the stuff that's coming down the pipe, I think will help us to make decisions faster. The craziest statistic that I heard recently was that from like the point of discovery to actually mining is like 27 years. And a lot of that has to do with how long it takes to permit and all of the roadblocks that that has. And I think that we're in a circumstance with China and other global and economic pressures where we simply cannot afford for that to be the case because we will not have what we need to make what we need life to do at this point. And so permitting has to change around that. You and I have probably very little to do with that other than just being passionate about the need for it. But permitting is going to have to catch up to some of the other changes that we're seeing so that some of this gets to happen. What do you think about that? Do you have any insights or anything to say about that? I know that's a big loaded question that I didn't prepare you for.
Well, it all comes down to clarity and being able to communicate the purpose of what you're doing and the risks involved and who's going to be impacted, and being able to articulate why you're doing what you're doing. And if great people are motivated to join the mining industry and help out on projects, I mean, when I say join the mining industry, I don't mean like become a card carrying member of the AEMA and SME and that sort of thing, but at least like be interested and maybe
Yeah.
take up a project, nearby and contribute positive. That's important to
Yeah.
be able to make better decisions and for people to have confidence in those decisions as well.
Yeah.
As it relates to like slow permitting and that sort of thing, I think for the reasons that we talked about like earlier, it will get a lot faster to permit a mine in the United States. There are things that are occurring from a policy perspective, but then also people getting involved that otherwise wouldn't have been involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2015, when Mountain Pass was going through issues there, people
Yeah.
were sort of talking about a national security perspective, right? Now they're really talking about it from a national security perspective.
Yep.
And just as a function of that, there are a lot of very qualified and capable people who are thinking about these problems and building coalitions with people like you and me in order to speed up the supply that's coming domestically.
Yep.
What I find interesting also is like people talk a lot about critical minerals but what gets lost in the mix is the conversation around aggregates and the conversation around gold as well. There are hundreds, if not thousands, I don't know the number, but like there's a ton of aggregate mines throughout the United States. And the United States, I think, is like the world's fifth or third, or somewhere in that. They're not top one or top two, but exporter of gold.
Yep.
Maybe we're one of the largest producers of gold on the planet. And all of that promotes a strong and healthy economy within the United States and within areas that are close to the United States as well. I mean, it's easier for Alex and I to do our work in Canada, the United States, Mexico, and the countries in South America as well, and Latin America, just because of the hemisphere that we're on.
Right.
Right. And it's interesting to see that there's this level of energy and engagement from people in the United States, but then all throughout North and South America that are really making a difference for what they're doing in the local communities and being able to promote a strong economy near them. And it's great to be involved.
It's a really exciting thing to be involved with. I think we're obviously of the same mind around that and involved in some of the same organizations that are helping with that. But I think that the word is spreading. I think that if we can continue to be strong corporate citizens and manage ESG and do things in a responsible way quickly, that certainly that will aid in our ability to obtain permits and get all of this moving through. And as you noted, the national security component of it, I think we can't not look at presently. And so all of that, I think, leans into our ability to get some really, really exciting things done. And I'm optimistic that you said you thought that the price to actually mine will go down, because as we've seen several gold clients and companies have to sort of go into care and maintenance because it costs too much to produce. And it's wild that we've got peak gold and they can't afford to produce it.
I don't think many people would have expected for that. Like, we're so focused on the gold price going up, but then the cost per ton is also increasing. And so gold companies are really, really struggling.
Yep.
I think that will reduce over time. It's undeniable that inflation is a problem, and the cost of, especially like just getting people involved in the project and everything, like the cost is going up everywhere, right? And it puts a lot of stress on businesses, and it's certainly something to consider, like starting a new business, which Alex and I have been doing. And but the thing is, if you're able to put together a good team around you and have people who believe in what you're doing, and you're able to demonstrate success, it's hard not to feel positive, at least from my perspective. No doubt there's companies out there that may be struggling for many reasons outside of their control. But I think the things that they can control and that they will be able to control in the future, I think they'll be able to see pretty inspiring benefits to their business, just being able to harness not only new technologies, but the new people and relationships that are built around the mining industry. I think it's been great. I mean, like, it's starting ExploreTech was inspiring because we could finally do what we've been wanting to do for years in our PhD. And it's like we were sort of in our PhD, we see it's successful, we know these things are working. It's just we need to get out and do it and commercialize. And like, Alex and I had never started a business before. And so we're learning, right? We're learning how to operate a business, but then also how to operate and sell this technology as well. But again, it comes down to people and the people that you have around you and building like a strong coalition around you. And I'm inspired by the people that have helped us out, believed in us, and, invite us on the podcast and have good conversations.
Well, I from the moment we chatted at AUMA several years ago, and I think you were finishing your PhD at that time, I was like, man, that you're going to do some amazing things, and that's absolutely come to fruition. And so I'm
Thank you.
so impressed by the work that you've gotten done in such a small amount of time. At every conference I'm at, I see this tall redheaded guy walking around and I'm like, man, he's at it again. But the impact that you're making, I think, is amazing. And your enthusiasm is exactly what we need in our industry. And I've been around a little bit longer than you. I'm literally like, LinkedIn is imminently going to announce that I've done this for 20 years. And I always thought, man, if I like ever get to that point, I'm going to be old. And like, I don't feel old, but I think that the enthusiasm and the people of our industry are just some of the best. And I'm always so inspired. And every time as an entrepreneur and a small business owner that I'm sort of feeling deflated, if I go to a mining conference, I usually come home feeling a whole lot better because everybody else is sort of working in concert to also get some really big, sometimes things that feel insurmountable done. And we sort of like just blaze this trail together. And so I'm glad to have you be part of it. I'm glad to be watching your success and your influence because I think that all of that is just so needed. But I guess as we're coming up on the end of our time, my next big question for you is sort of like, how are you, or what are you doing from your perspective, to make mining a better place?
Well, thanks, Lindsey. Really kind words before. And I appreciate all the nice work that you've done and the people that you inspire around you. It's great. And again, thanks for having me here. For us, you're asking about next steps, right?
Next steps, just, I start off each podcast with like the big vision, like what's getting you excited. And then I try to like bring it back to like, what is your footprint? What are you doing to make it feel better? And it could be something personal. It could be something from an organizational standpoint. And I know it's a big question that makes everybody queasy, but there's a podcast that's called How to Be a Better Human. And at the very end, that's the question he asks. And so I'm stealing it and saying, how are you making mining a better place? And what are the next steps for you or for the mining industry on a broader perspective?
Absolutely. And for me personally, it's all about the people. And it's all about, I mean, we've talked about this throughout this past hour, is how can you build strong teams and inspire people to do a great job and believe in them to be able to realize their full potential. And what I like to do is just build really strong teams with a positive outlook. And I think it's a great time to have a positive outlook. There's so much going right in the world right now that, yeah, there are some days that can seem a little negative, right? But I'm so happy with where the industry is, with the conversations that I have with people, with the opportunities that are afforded. I mean, it really is a blessing. And keeping that positivity, it's really great to work with great people. And I try to be as good of a person as I can be. And I find that attracts other strong people to work with as well. So I'm going to keep on that mission. And at ExploreTech, we sort of build that mission into everything that we do. The technology that we help organizations with, the teams that we come in and we essentially become a part of the team. We want to make discoveries with the teams. That is the best possible thing that we can do. I always say, like, there's nothing better to do for a local economy than to be able to make a discovery of something that you can sustainably extract and build an entire system around. It's just fantastic what you're able to do and uplift places. And, you know, being able to go back to older mines, find more metal there, being able to promote the economy in those locations, that's fantastic. And new ones are great too. It's all about making discoveries, and we want to use technology and build great teams to make more of them. So
I love it. And I'm really excited to see you guys continue to excel and influence our industry and do good work and build good teams and spread positive energy. I am on Team Alex and Tyler and ExploreTech, and thank you so much for being here. I really can't thank you enough. And you're welcome back anytime to talk about some awesome work that you're doing.
yeah, great. This is fantastic. And if anybody wants to follow along, they can follow us on LinkedIn. I've got a profile on X, Tyler Hall29, and then tylerhall.com. You can follow
Amazing.
along there.
So we will also include all of that stuff sort of as a connectable link on everything else that we put out and some other fun facts when this gets all done and uploaded, so to speak. So again, thank you for being here, and we will talk very, very soon.